Welcome everyone into the yet another panel discussion of the series Organized Original by Organized Chaos, which is India's first Gen Z centric knowledge sharing platform. And today we are delving into the topic of finance and growth of startups. So I would like to welcome our very renowned speakers, Mr. Yashashwy Agarwal, who is the founder and CEO of Bharo. Mr. Yashashwy, welcome to on board. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me, Shubham?
Yeah.
Thank you so
And
much for
now I would like to introduce Mr. Khalid Wani, who is the founder and director of KWCG. Welcome, Mr. Khalid.
Thank you so much, Shubham, for a warm introduction, and hi to everybody who's tuned in today.
Yeah. And now I would like to welcome Mr. Abhigyan Sengupta, who is the Chief Business Officer of Eyecan. And let's start this conversation and delve deep into the sector and aspects of finance and the growth of a startup. And uh, let's start with Mr. Abhigyan. So, Mr. Abhigyan, in this startup sector, okay, there are many things are going on. People are usually the who are the first time founders are very confused about managing their finances and about their growth, which is the major part of it. So, like, what do you think? Like, how can startup strike the right balance between the short term financial stability and the long time growth prospect in their financial planning? Because initially they usually don't have that much of experience, that much of guidance. So, what do you think about it?
Thank you, Shubham. So basically, for all the aspiring, founders and entrepreneurs out there, the young blood, as I uh, startup, starting a startup is a very big fashion nowadays, right? Almost
Yeah.
everybody's doing it. But, as you correctly surmised, one of the most crucial factor, more than planning, about growth strategies, more than the business idea is finances, right? If the money isn't there, both from revenue or funding, or internally, if you're not able to generate money, the business is just an idea without the finances. To that effect, both short term and long term strategies go hand in hand, right? I mean, if you plan on the short term, forget about the long term, you'll have a good couple of 6 8 months to survive, and then poof, you're gone in the market. Long term, if you plan, you might not even hit the road, right? So a careful balance of both needs to be planned. To that effect, specifically focusing on the short term strategies, there are three things that on the top of my head I can guide basis my experience. First of all, first and most important thing is, when you are starting a business, it should be revenue centric. Nobody's here to do charity. It's not an NGO. So set up, realistic, achievable targets when it comes to your revenue, and achieve them in the short term. That should be your first and foremost, priority. Secondly, basically, anytime that a startup is running in the initial 2 years, there's going to be a lot of financial mishaps, right? Starting from paying, salaries of employees, to unplanned expenses in, partnerships, launching a product, anything. So keep a plan when it comes to specific, unplanned expenses. Keep a rainy day fund, as I call it, and always make sure that you're prepared for these kind of unplanned financial expenses. Third thing, that comes to my mind when it comes to financial strategies, there will be times when you don't have those funds in the short term, 6 months, 8 months, 1 year after you start up, right? You need to have the business acumen, but more importantly, you need to have the understanding how to arrange or manage finances when you don't have revenue or even funding, right? It can be as simple as running some small side projects, to launching your product before the timeline, but after the, of course, the product is market ready, to any kind of other financial immediate activities that you can do to keep your company going in the right direction that you see fit. Now, with short term financial plans aligned, on the long term you need to focus on three things. Anybody needs to focus on three things. Once you have achieved short term financial stability, next would be ideally looking at growth. Any enterprise that anybody starts is ultimately all about growth. So do financial growth planning, which I'm sure my esteemed panelists, and colleagues over here will be able to, guide you better on that. Have a long-term financial growth plan in mind. Have sustainable cash flows when it comes to running your businesses on the long term.
Yeah.
Right? multiple sources of revenue. And of course, as I mentioned before, always keep a rainy day fund. Segregate a certain portion of your funds specifically for this. With both short term and long term, financial planning going hand in hand, and a little bit of luck, you can achieve the impossible. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, absolutely. That this is quite a necessary thing, and besides that, many people just, as you said, that the cash flow is like really necessary initially. And I would just like to get the insight from Yash as well as Mr. Khalid. That what do you think about this? Like, do you agree with the Abhigyan's point, and as well as what strategies do you think, like one-time founder or like any founder should take care of and kept in mind so that they can go ahead in the business? Yeah, I just go with Mr. Khalid. Yeah, please.
Okay, so the thing is, because our audiences aren't as expert as we may be, so I would like to probably simplify this for our listeners. What our dear friend already highlighted, he has covered mostly all the important points. But what I feel is that for them to navigate such a scenario, they need to have a balance between the financial stability and the growth prospects effectively, because as a founder you cannot be an expert at finances. You need to be smart enough to be able to ask the right questions, whether it's your accountant or it's your someone. It could be your investor who is also bringing in his talent at the end of the day. So you need to be very clear, that as a founder you're also multi-hatting at the same time. You might not be great at mitigating through finances, but I feel you should be very realistic when it comes to finances. And as our dear friend already highlighted, it's very important to prioritize your cash flow, because you're not running an NGO here, right? So you have people to pay salaries, you have office expenses, you have other skill based softwares that you have, probably a big subscription, and compliances and taxations. So it should be a balance of everything. It doesn't mean if you've been blessed with investment that you would end up running around acquiring an expensive house or buying an expensive supercar. So you need to understand, at the end of the day, the company may be owned by you, but you are also answerable to the money that is owed to you by to the investors. So I mean, that's what I feel. And some of the very basic points that I could highlight could be lean operations. Don't go hiring too many people when you don't even need them. Sometimes you could always go about outsourcing some of the services. White labeling is a good thing. I believe in shared economy, and you should definitely have a long term vision. As our friend highlighted, you need to know how long your runway money is going to last. You might have to take a hit, that there are times you might take a lesser salary so that you could accommodate a person who's way more talented than you in terms of leadership. Yeah, please
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like Mr. Yashashwy Agarwal, like, what do you want to contribute in that as well? Because you being coming from, the accounting, like being an accounting expert, you must be knowing how to, plan the finances and plan everything out. So, yeah, please.
Yeah, Shubham. So, rightly put by Abhigyan and Khalid sir. Both of you have almost explained how the startups can achieve both short-term stability and long-term stability at the same time. So it is really important. I'll just submit up. I probably think they have already covered it. So just it is important that a startup decides on its revenue stream ahead. They're not right, as both of you said. It is not. We're not here to do charity. So it is important to decide on your revenue stream first. Start your operations. Prioritize your operation expenses. Before your capital expenses, so that your revenue gets started. Diversify your revenue streams. These are the things I can focus on the revenue area. It is important to have your budgeting done, like again, short term stability and long term growth, both will come out of your budgeting. As you're a startup, so probably you'll have to revise your budgeting over and over again. So again, as a business entrepreneur, we have said you're not expected to be an expert in finances. So if you could, it will be better if you can take a professional advice on your go. A lot
Precisely.
of startup entrepreneurs, do not focus on this perspective. Everyone is learning out there a particular aspect of business for you to, for support of, a brand to go ahead and do a business. So
Precisely.
it is very important to, have a professional advice with you. Again, one more thing, bootstrapping. I think bootstrapping is also a really, important criteria where, startups, they you just want to, expand as soon as possible. They want to, grow today, 10x, 100x. But if you, slowly bootstrap your business and decide on your revenue streams today, diversify them, invest in your operation expenses, maintain healthy profits. I think maintaining healthy profits, these are few ways, having a professional guidance, you can go ahead, have a short term stability as well as a long term growth, I think.
Yeah. So like I'm just coming up with the follow up question to you, Mr. Yash. Is that like everybody like if we talk about India, so everybody is like whenever you are starting something, just be very calculative. Okay, plan and think about every scenario which can happen. While building your startup. So like what do you think? Like what role does scenario analysis analysis and the risk asset play in shaping a startup financial strategy? Particularly because this is something where many people lack, and I think you can just guide us into
Yeah.
that.
So just as I just spoke, you need to budget yourself, right? At the start, as a startup, you need to have a detailed plan of your budget for, a particular period of time, like depending on the industry you're in. Once you have your detailed budgeting, I think a regular review over the budgeting, understanding your customer acquisition cost and, customer lifetime values and stuff like that, that can help. Uh, so basically that is, that can help your assessment also, because, budgeting will portray where all what are all scenarios can go. This is purely financial. And in risk assessment, again, there are a lot of non-financial factors also we could consider, like legal and compliances. Like a lot of startup, fail to protect their IPs, fail to comply with legal aspects. So that gives a criteria of risk while navigating in a startup environment. Uh, a lot, again, you're not even a advocate or a, legal expert. Uh, so you can get a professional advice from a legal person too, because it is very important for you to protect your IP, protect your business, uh, to manage risk.
Yeah, for sure. That is like pretty insightful. And beside, like, I just want to move to Mr. Khalid, as he has quite a lot of experience, and he has seen many startups growing up in the market. So, Mr. Khalid, like, can
Right.
you share some example of innovative financial strategies or approaches that startup has used to gain a competitive edge in their like respective industries and the sectors, like how they have evolved, what innovations they have made. So, like, can you please, share some good examples, like whatever you have seen and observed?
You know, I mean, before I give you examples, I'll pick up on some of the very basic points. You learn as you go, right? And some of the basic things that you learned back in college or in school also was like a SWOT analysis, right? So, and when you as a startup have a business idea, you're always studying your competition. So you have to obviously study your competition really heavily, because there is always something that your competition isn't able to deliver that you will, right? And that is your eureka moment, because all startups succeed when they're providing a solution to a problem. So as someone who has had a 2 decade of a journey, whether as an investor or as an entrepreneur or as a mentor, I've noticed the issue with most of the startups is that they don't know, or they don't want to ask questions. They should be in a position where they need to be open and shameless. Listen, I don't know, tell me, please teach me, please go out and network, please go out, reach out to your customer. Your all your startup ideas are on presumption. They're not based on actual data, which is on ground zero. There's a big difference between your dream and reality. So what the problem with most of the founders when it comes to, especially since we're talking about financing, they do false projections. Oh, my company is valued at $10 million. Oh, I will start being a profit making company in the next 2 years. So these are some of the things that they need to stop saying and stop doing, because the bubble has burst long ago. We're anyways going through a funding winter, and a lot of
Absolutely. Yeah.
investors can catch your bluff very easily. You need to stop being a con artist, because most of the
Yeah.
founders in our country who are not really, let's just say, employed, they end up calling themselves an entrepreneur. Whereas being an entrepreneur, trust me, it's not an easy job. And I haven't been successful all my life. For me to be able to reach to a level where I am today, I've had 100,000 failures. I've had failed strategies. I've had so many pitfalls. I've had people block me. I've had people, not entertain me. So, at the end of the day, you number one, you need to understand you're a human being. So you need to approach your consumers as a human. You need to stop presuming. You need to stop relying on the data from Google. You need to form your own data analysis by going out on your own. Depending on your product or technology or whatever your business plan is, you need to go out there. You need to go out, speak to the people. And that authentic raw data is what will actually help you make that money. So, coming back to the question, I mean, it's very very momentarily the answer can change, right? I mean, if you think of COVID, this question would have completely ruined everybody, right? The approach, they were not prepared for the fact that how would they manage a business if it was operational heavy. I mean, but there were some companies who ended up maneuvering themselves. They adapted. So that is what the startups need to realize. And this question is also answerable to people who are, say, 2 years down the lane, 3 years down the lane in their journey. But if I had to answer to people who have just embarked upon, and especially the bubble and the fact that that investor can just give them money like a golgappa or like buying a chips for 10 rupees, it's not that easy. You need to do your due diligence. You need to be able to be in a position where you have the answers to every question. But at the same time, what we all three of us have been focusing is bring in the talent. The initial burn is always going to be heavy for you, because you are investing on in a long term, right? So Rome wasn't built in a day. So you need to understand, you need to stop being desperate and excited about the fact that if you've started a company today and it's going to start paying you tomorrow. So I mean, I don't want to get into too depth, because I wanted to keep it simple since I've been doing that from the beginning. But I mean, some of the strategies which I would now like to discuss in terms of how they could raise money is, some of the easiest parts could be, if the investor is not entertaining them, they could reach their relatives, their friends and family. We call that crowdsourcing, right? And if that works, well and good, or otherwise you could always uh, go to the banks. There are banks, centralized banks, that are giving you funding on very marginal interest rates or collateral free. Please join government initiatives like Atal incubation, because you need to be incubated. You're not born like Arjun was, that he learned from his mother's womb how to aim at the eye, right? So you need to be in a position where you need to know your strengths and weaknesses. And that's where I would like to now give others a chance to talk, please.
Sure. Like, yeah, you have mentioned so many points which are regarding about the sustainability. Okay, and like where just many startups are like nowadays, as you said, they are becoming the con artists. They are just burning money. They are not doing the good impact. They're just having the money, being in the company. They're just getting the salaries and just getting things done. That's all. They're just actually just missing, like losing the trust of the investors. That's why investors are getting
So they're basically missing on the ethics in their life.
exactly.
वो ट्रम्प कार्ड नहीं है कि आपकी लॉटरी लगी तो फिर कल क्या करोगे. अगर आपने 10 रुपए लिए तो आपको 12 रुपए वापस करने हैं. और वो 12 रुपए आप ऑलरेडी बर्न कर चुके होंगे एम्प्लॉइज को सैलरी देके, रेंटल्स देके, टैलेंट एक्विजिशन में, you know, a lot of other factors. So,
Exactly.
you know, I mean, if I had to talk about, you know, how the startups can go through the sustainability, because if you remember, you know, back in 2-3 years back, there was a carbon tax levied on a lot of companies, right? Where they had to pay a certain amount of money, or there was a, you know, CSR, corporate social responsibility. But since now we are all going towards the environment side, which is why, you know, Twitter ended up firing a lot of employees, which a lot of people don't know was one of the main reasons. He said that, you know, environmentally, I don't need so many employees. It was not because he didn't have the money to pay them. He said that the same amount of work can be done by, say, XYZ amount of employees. So please, I would like to let others also contribute to the same. I don't want to, you know, take it all and steal it from them, please.
So I would request Mr. Abhigyan, like, what's your take on this? Because you, like, I personally know him, and the way he deals with, you know, the people, and the way he's working towards your startup and in the certain experience. So what insights would you like to share about the sustainability part majorly, and the other managing financial assets and all? Yeah, Mr. Abhigyan, please. I think he has some network issue. But yeah, we can go ahead with Mr. Yash.
I think we.
Yeah.
Yash,
Shubham, can I add?
Yeah, sure.
I think we lost Abhigyan.
Yeah.
Hoping that
we'll wait for him. In the meantime, Yash.
In the meantime, I totally agree to Sir's view on being environmental. It is really important for the startups to be environmentally, you know, considerate. Yeah, we have Abhigyan back.
Yeah, apologies.
But it's okay. You continue, Yash, and then Abhigyan can join us.
Yeah,
sure. So Abhigyan, I was just we lost you for a minute there. I was just continuing on what Sir Khalid sir was saying. So I thought his point on, you know, startups being aligned with, you know, environmental impacts that they are going through, or, you know, they being aligned with the data driven psychology. Like, it is really essential for the startups to be data driven today. Like that kind of answers your question there, Shubham, where, you know, for risk assessment, the startups need to go out there in the market and find out really what is happening. Like, is their product really accepted out there? Are there substitutes? So it is important to have a market survey of customers. Then later comes, you know, a market survey of, you know, employees. Like, if you're already in a startup stage where you're already making your revenue and business, so it is important to, you know, get customer feedback, while, you know, you also, your employees are a core part of your business, right? We all agree to that. Employee नहीं है तो कुछ धंधा चलेगा ही नहीं. चलो, तो it is important
but
that,
I would
you know,
also like to add one thing. You know, a lot of startup founders think employees as an expense, whereas your employees are your investment. Please stop treating them like an expenditure. You know, they are your asset, and you need to have a retention model, because if you keep hiring and firing, then you're not a sustainable model. And environmentally, if you ask me, you know, you need to be very careful, because 6 months it takes you to train them, and then if suddenly they leave, then again you're spending that money, that energy, whether it's the electricity or the money, or, you know, the resources on them. So yeah, I mean, these are some of the things I feel that, you know, validate the incorporation of sustainability and ethical consideration.
Similarly, if you're like in a service-based industry, like imagine you're in a service-based industry, it is important to have customer retention also. Like, you have employee retention.
Correct.
Right. So this will help all the startups navigate the risks. Data driven, like, you know, future forecasting, where, you know, they are doing a survey out there to find out, you know, what is happening in the market, what will happen in the market in the future. So it is really important for startups to be data backed up there.
So, Yash, I agree with you over there. In fact, I agree with both of you. I mean, very interestingly, both of you have brought about two very different aspects of a company's or an enterprise's risk assessment. Yash, you talked about, you know, more about internal facing risk assessment, where you look at the financial risk, where you look at, you know, say something like legal, or a compliance based risk. And God knows in India we face so many compliance issues, which are half of which are outdated, which doesn't even need. I mean, coming from the legal background, I know it's absolutely useless, but we still need to do it. On the other hand, Wani sir actually pointed about external risks. Analyze the market, analyze competition, look at the different aspects of the industry. Whether something I personally felt in my couple of years of experience in the ecosystem is that most of the people come up with a solution and then try to fit it in the market, right? Some of the people who I have worked with have also actually utilized this. I mean, nobody questions their dedication or their passion. Problem is you need to actually analyze the market out there. Is your solution even required? It may be something brilliant, but if people are not willing to pay for it, if people are just it's just something of a distraction, then there's no point of building an enterprise around it. You can do it as a hobby, right? Similarly, then just as Yash said, there are so many compliances, financial factors. Yes, you have come up with a brilliant product, people are going to pay for it, but your cost to manufacture that offering outweighs the revenues that are coming in the company. It is highly skewed. I mean, you may look for money to balance it out by funding, but what if funding isn't there? One is as he mentioned, there's a funding winter going on. I mean, then what do? I mean, you're neck deep in the business and then you don't know what to do. Then you're sinking every day and then you lose your interest in the business.
Exactly.
So both for external,
Precisely.
so both for external as well as internal assessment needs to be done in conjunction before you launch an enterprise, and even after you launch an enterprise. It's an everyday struggle. Right? Every day you need to be updated, as Wani sir mentioned. Every day you need to learn a lot. Right? You need to keep updated with the industry. And as Yash said, something on the lines of basically you need to be updated about what are the risks you can face. Internally, employee wise, as both of them said, employees are an asset. I mean, you can build the greatest product out there. If you don't have a team to support you, where are you? So, I mean, in summation, that's my 2 cents
Exactly.
on that.
I mean, I understand, but
Another
also coming back to the question, because I'm sorry, Shubham, since we diverted a little bit, because our main emphasis was, how can, startups, when it comes to finances, be more ethical in terms of, sustainability, right? So if I would like to come back to that, so there are, I mean, as Abhigyan also said, the kind of product they're manufacturing, or the kind of, say, add-on they have into their product. If they're using too much of plastic, which is not environmental friendly, so they need to cut down on that. Like recently in Delhi, most of the delivery apps, they focused on paper based containers. So and to share it with the audience, India is the one who invented leaves based plates, which is now being completely copied and used by Germans. So something which is sustainable, to entrepreneurs, is something that we've been doing for ages. Our country has always been the forefront to everything. It's just that whatever the history had the role to play, but now we're hitting back. So coming back to the main sustainable point, where there are ways to raise funding, which is green financing, and there are a couple of missions like Green India Mission and National Clean Energy Fund provide, where you gain points. You basically earn these set of virtual, say, coins from the government, where they say that at the end of the year you will be exempted by a certain amount of taxes, where Yash might be able to also add on to that. And you need to have sustainable supply chains. You don't need to import everything from China. You might as well find a vendor within the country, so that you're saving up on export import duties. You're saving up on, as Abhi also said, that the compliance heavy. The reason why our country is coming up with those compliance is also to keep the sustainable model in mind, where that the product that you're developing, is it responsible to your environment around you? Is it being sustainable to your finances? When I say sustainable, maybe if you would have imported it, it would have cost you 10 rupees, but if you are able to source it within the country, you might be able to just source it at 5 rupees. So you also need to understand, I, from an investor's point of view, would also look into a startup. Are they really taking care of environment. Like there is a company in Delhi, they have a whole building in Nehru Place which is self-sustainable. They have their own waste management. They have solar power, electricity. They've reduced the usage of air conditioning, which in return is reducing the global warming. So you have to come up with ways like these, where you're less dependent on use of paper. You're more dependent on, say, CRM tools where you don't have to write down everything. So these are some of the examples that help a company become sustainable financially, is what I feel. And I, like, again, initially also I said I will not go too deep into those technical terms, that things like environmental social governance, or initially which used to be called CSR, right? So investors are now increasingly looking into companies that are also taking care of this, because in the coming time we may start having lesser resources around us. So you need to be, as Yash also highlighted, you need to be able to trend forecast. You need to be future ready. So these are some of the very important points, that you need to
I
be
think, sir,
sustainably.
even
Yeah,
by creating this environmental image that you're environmentally friendly, I think that also creates a brand image. So long-term sustainability comes out of having a great brand image. I think that
that's a very good point. But there is a problem lately that's been happening. A lot of companies only get active during the LGBTQ month, but they're not doing anything throughout the year, right? If it's Earth Day, they will switch off the lights only on that day. So the government is keeping a continuous eye on you. Are you really following this throughout the year, or you're just doing it on that day as a kind of a marketing gimmick?
all
Which is why
stakeholders,
they
I
need
think
to be
even the
ethical.
customers are looking at you if you're following it all through year out. Like even the customer wants you
Exactly.
to follow up
Maybe
on
it's
your
a Western
promise.
concept, but yeah, maybe it's a Western concept, but you guys in India need to get real about it. You need to be ethically doing marketing, where you're not just suddenly giving importance to the female employees only during the Women's Day. You should be actively looking out to hire more women, because you don't have to go by the gender basis. You have to build up a gender fluid environment. So these are some of the points that will catch the eye of the investor as well as the government.
Yeah, so absolutely, like, thank you so much first of all for sharing all this, exciting and making this conversation really interesting. But now I actually wanted to delve into the main and very important aspect of a startup ecosystem, that is, mergers and acquisitions. Okay, so where many startups are just building themselves just to get acquired, or somebody just getting the fundings and having like scaling up at that level where they can acquire their competitors. So I this question I personally
Precisely.
wanted to ask Mr. Yashashwy, is that like there are very ups and downs, and people usually not aware about like how to proceed with those things. So like in like what should I say, like this is what are the common pitfalls to avoid
Thank you,
when
Shubham.
when
Thank you for
people are
that question. Actually,
engaging. Sorry.
I think it is really important for the audience to be educated on this perspective that partnerships and
Exactly.
mergers and acquisitions, yes. A lot of people out there, like we are startup friendly India right now. So
Yeah.
everyone out there, is trying to build up a startup, and if you want everyone to feel included, that this is just one view on the thing, right? So if you want everyone to feel included, it is important to have mergers and partnerships. One, and two, even if you want to race really fast, I think it is important to have support, right? So a lot of startups out there are looking for doing mergers and partnerships with different, either may it be vendors or sales teams, marketing, affiliate marketing, that is called, like in different names and terms. But we're just solely going to stick to partnerships and mergers, as your question is, right? So I think I just listed down a few points that I thought there's important for a
For
startup to
sure.
look
For sure.
into. Yeah, I'll just get to it. Yeah. So I think a lot of startups fail at looking at non-financial terms, right? So when you are having a partnership with someone, it is important that the other person is not only financially stable, but is also matching a vision, right? Your culture, your vision, or your interest, or as a company, right? This is a key factor that a lot of people do not look over, maybe, at when you're coming into partnerships and mergers and acquisitions. It is important that all your employees, the employee culture, let it be, or your work culture in any other matter, any other way may it be, that should match with the other organizations employee culture, or sales culture, the ethical, like we had our discussion earlier. Khalid sir rightly said that everyone, the investors, the government, are looking after whether you're environmentally right? So they're looking at your culture. And again, when you yourself as a startup entrepreneur are trying to build a culture centric environment in your organization, it is important to have that. I also think where their contingency planning is a step where they fail, right? A lot of mergers and acquisitions partnerships might not go through. So it is important to have a contingency plan where if it does not go through, then what, right? A lot of people rush into the merger and acquisition whenever they get into a rapport. They're trying to build a rapport.
Yeah,
They
because they're too
get
greedy,
emotional,
because they're too greedy,
greedy, or
Yeah.
emotional, right? So they have
Yeah, or
unrealistic
they're not too
expectations.
serious about it. Yeah.
True. So it is really important to have realistic expectations when you're going with a merger or acquisition. Draft out your draft out what you're going to do with your merger. Um, Carefully plan it, and look at the the due diligence of the industry. Like, obviously, it is really important to know ki the other industry is compliant when it comes to legal. As Abhigyan said, the laws are really getting complex. He's a legal background person. He can tell it is changing every day. It is very dynamic, right? So it
I,
is really
I mean,
important because you never
Yash,
know what law. Yes, sir.
I mean, the
You never know
reason,
what
I
law.
mean, I'd like to, no, I'll tell you why. Because if I had
Hmm.
to acquire, say, Eyecan, let's just take an example. If I
Yeah,
may,
sure.
Abhi, if you may allow me,
Yeah, the
right?
proposal
So that
offer is going to
our
happen, I
list,
guess.
no. I mean, my point is, I will check his paperwork. I'll check his
Hmm.
balance sheet before acquiring him. I'll make sure that has he been culturally sensitive towards every aspect, and whether it's gender neutrality, whether it's religion inclusivity, or it's physically challenged people. So uh, and I will also check whether he has paid his taxes on time or not, or has he been paying his GST for the last whatever years, right? So these are some of the very common points that an investor or a company that's bigger than you, say for example, when I think Zomato took over Food Panda, right? Or Uber Eats, right? So before they did, they obviously made sure that they did the background check. Now, for example, Byju's is wanting to sell out, but they'll be majorly screwed for having unethical ways of marketing. Why? They were pushing their employees to make sales, whereas it was not the actual consumer who was buying their courses. It was the manager who had to purchase it on his own to show sales. So these are some of the points, if I had to acquire or merge a smaller startup into a bigger startup, these are some of the very important points that the bigger company will look into. They will go dig deep into your past. They'll find out, did you post any sensitive comment on Facebook or Instagram that might bring in negativity along with you. I mean, you remember when Flipkart was being acquired by Walmart, there was a Me Too happening against one of the founders, right? So that completely ruined the deal, the valuation. Whether it was at 100 rupees, it came down to 8 rupees. So this is why, this is what a lot of startups need to keep in mind, whether they're at a series A, B, or they're a pre-seed or post-seed, or if they feel if they're not able to sustain and run the business, instead of shutting it down, they could always be acquired by someone else. And then they could have these term sheets where, if I am the founder of the company, I would like a certain amount of salary. Because I know it's followed question, so I will not answer that right now, probably. Abhi, would you like to add anything to this?
Yes, sir. Thank you for bringing out that particular topic of legal and financial due diligence. In fact, we have been going through the same thing a couple of months back. So
Yeah.
I have actually been on both the sides. I have assisted startups, doing that due diligence earlier in my career, and now I'm on the other side of it where I'm being scrutinized. So I can't stress on this enough.
Exactly.
Exactly what
It's like
I
an
said.
audit.
Actually, it's like
Yeah,
even
yeah.
in fact, Yash
It
is
is an
part of
audit.
the
Yeah.
process. So from day one, any company, whether you go for merger or getting acquired. Now, acquiring is a separate thing. Nobody's going to check your balance sheets, right? But if you're getting acquired or you're going for a merger, I mean, and this is a message to anybody who's currently viewing or will be viewing, aspiring entrepreneurs or anybody who's building a business. From day one, get your compliances, your finances, your legals in order. Most of the founders think this is a secondary thing. I just want to build a business. Yes, that's a part of the business. But if these things are not sorted in order, if you forget, finance, forget, mergers, acquisition, if you go for institutional funding, if you go for any kind of funding, any investor, they will pour through this, and it's mandatory. They should pour through this. That point of time, you're scrambling. How do I arrange my balance sheet? How do I file the compliances? How much
Exactly.
fine do I pay? It's a very messy affair. But specifically when it comes to mergers and acquisition, I have two thoughts. One is tangible, and second is intangible. Tangible, as both Wani sir and Yashashwy was mentioning, things like your finances, your revenues are coming in, your compliances are in order, your team, your basic background check goes through. One very big important scrutiny happens apart from the companies on the founders themselves. Like sir was saying, their social
Bharat
media
is a big
posts.
example, man. Look at
Ashneer,
Ashneer, man. He's a big example, right? The way he was
Abs-
scrutinized, he's still not able to get out of it. With all due respect to him, we don't mean anything negative against him. We're just using this as an example. I mean, so much so every employee will be asked a question. How do you feel about your
abs-
bosses? How did they treat you? Right? Which is why places like Google, they provide the best possible food, the best possible services to their employees. So it's not you as a founder who is responsible when you're getting acquired or merged with another company. There are 10,000 things that will be considered. एक एक चीज को नोच के निकाला जाएगा बाहर जो तुम्हें भी नहीं पता होगा. अगर तुमने अपनी
abs-
पर्सनल गाड़ी का पेट्रोल कंपनी के अकाउंट से डलवाया होगा, दैट विल बी स्क्रूटनाइज्ड. अगर तुमने छुट्टी कहीं मारी ऑफिस के कंपनी के खर्चे पे, देन यू आर गॉन. सो दीज आर द थिंग्स दैट विल बी स्क्रूटनाइज्ड, टू पुट इट वेरी सिंपली.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one more example sir gave was Byju's. I mean, they acquired Akash, they acquired White Hat Junior, increased their valuation. Now they are planning to go for IPO. Who will buy their stocks? I mean, these are very simple factors that you should keep in mind from day one before you commit. Now, these are tangible. Now, intangible, from the acquiring company's perspective, any acquiring company founders or the management should always think about what will be the synergy, what is the future they want to build with the company they're acquiring. Is the company's vision and the ethics actually allowing them to grow upon their already existing business? But actually, when it comes to an
Exactly.
acquisition, the thought is more on the perspective of the acquiring company, their founder and their management, because there's this concept of golden handcuff. I mean, once you go through this acquisition, there is no turning back. You should, as a
Of
founder,
course.
think about what it's a startup is like your baby. Are you okay in handing over your baby to somebody who does not, care about the values or the ethics? So these are the two major factors that comes to my mind for any M&A deals. Yeah.
And of course, it should not be your only end goal, that if you're not floating enough कि आप इसको बेच के निकल के भाग जाओ. Because you must have seen a lot of those motivational photos, no, where somebody's digging to get a diamond out. But before Yash ends up finding a small diamond, and I say that, sorry for the language. I end up saying, I'll also dig at the same place, and I find nothing. Whereas if I would have dug 3 more days further, I would have gotten a bigger diamond, right? So hang in there,
Yeah.
guys. Don't lose hope. Don't give up, man. And don't गिरगिट की तरह रंग मत बदलो दूसरे स्टार्टअप को देख के कि शायद उसको फायदा हुआ तो मुझे भी फायदा होगा. नहीं, हर किसी की कहानी अलग है, हर किसी की जर्नी अलग है. So please follow your own route, your own road, form your own destiny. Don't copy paste someone else, because we're so addicted to copying what the Americans do that we forget that we have to form our own story in our country.
Correct.
Like that's what I feel. Like everybody is having a story to tell. Like whenever they are starting their own businesses and everything, it's just when and personally everybody starts with the mindset that we have to disrupt the market. We just want to revolution. Like the revolution word is very common whenever somebody is pitching or something like that. So
I
but
actually
everything
said
has pros
disruption.
and cons.
Everybody wants to be a disruptor nowadays. They think they can all be the Bansals of the world or Ashneers of the world or Elon Musks of the world, but they can't. आप आपकी फिल्म की कहानी अलग है बाकियों की फिल्म से. So please
Like
अपनी कहानी खुद बनाइए, दूसरे को कॉपी मत कीजिए.
like exactly, let's get the business done. And like abhi I think we are at come like this interesting panel discussion has comes to an end. So I'll just gonna ask like one simple advice from all of you, that what should what you would like to say to the young entrepreneurs, because our platform is Gen Z centric. So everyone who is Gen Z is watching us, and they are seeking for the insights, like how should we grow in terms of the financial aspects as well as the growth of a startup. So I'll just start with Mr. Yashashwy Agarwal, and then we can follow up with Mr. Khalid and then Mr. Abhigyan. So please.
Yeah, sure. I think it is really important to have a purpose. Okay. Purpose that will serve a problem in the society, right? Every product or service out there is there to solve a problem. It is a solution for a pain point, right? So it is essential for a startup to have that purpose definition, right? It goes along with your vision. Um, like there are summing up. I mean, there are other many key factors that a startup can look into, right? Like as we already discussed it out. Okay, it is very important to have a professional guidance, to have a budgeting done, to look into the environmental aspects, your legal aspects, your take care of your stakeholders, right? It is your baby in the end, right? When you're handing over your baby, you want it, to be taken care of. And when anyone is adopting a baby, they want, it to have all vaccinations and it to be uh, in a good state of health. Obviously, anyone
Good
want
healthy condition.
good healthy condition, probably, right? So that is really important for a startup. These are some key factors that a startup should look into. Purpose is really important. A lot of people do not know why they are doing what they're doing. So it is important to identify what you're doing and why you're doing it. Over to, I think, Abhigyan and Khalid sir, if you want to add something to that.
Sure, if you allow me, I can. Or Abhigyan, do you
Sure, sir.
want?
Yes, sir, please go
Maybe
ahead.
I've spoken too much.
No, please go ahead, sir.
Most important to begin with, learn to get your hands dirty. Most importantly, if your skin is not in the game, don't do it. Please get out of it. Entrepreneurship is not for you if you're not going to wake up. And it's not about the 5 a.m. club, to be very honest. At the end of the day, you also need to be able to take care of yourself as a founder. अगर तुम्हारी health अच्छी नहीं है, तुम्हारी mental health अच्छी नहीं होगी. So, you need to be extremely resilient. अगर तुम 1000 बार गिरोगे तो तुम्हें 2000 बार उठना है और करना है काम को, right? And you need to localize your approach, yaar. I mean, like I said, stop cloning the ideas from Silicon Valley. we are we still are the sone ki chidiya, yaar. Don't forget that our country has the potential. We are already in the developed stage. It's just that the World Trade Organization might not have given us that thappa, but we don't need that thappa, man. It's people like us who are tuned in, whether it's us speakers or you listeners. You need to self motivate. You need to be able to motivate your audience, your customer. And most importantly, you need to be great at networking. You need to be able to go and speak to people. You need to build that network, whether it's with your consumer or it's with the investors, or it's with your vendors. And as Yashashwy also highlighted, financial discipline is very important here. At the end of the day, you can't have financial leakages in your pocket every day. that you're always having fancy dinners, you're always having fancy lunches, you're taking a holiday to go, or maybe Monaco, or Nice, or you're going to Saint Tropez. Stop doing that. Times have changed. Don't live for the Instagram. If you really want to be the disruptor, be the realistic. फटे हुए कपड़ों में घूमो यार, कोई स्ट्रेस नहीं है. जब तक वो फटके फेंकने वाली हालत में ना हो, तब तक कपड़े मत खरीदो. Same goes for your office, same goes for your discipline. Until and unless you really need a phone, don't go for an iPhone 15, boss. All the iPhones are pretty much the same. Don't flex, stop clouting. The problem with our founders in the countries, they all want to clout. सबको बस muscle दिखाने अपने. तो जब 10 किलो का भाला उठाने का आता है, किसी को आता नहीं उठाना. So and with technology changing so drastically, please upgrade yourself यार. अब देखो, मुझे नहीं पता था, there is a website called StreamYard. Today I learned something new, and I'm going to definitely use it again in the future, right? So you need to adapt every day. What did Darwin say? Survival of the fittest. Boss, you gotta be fit every single day, whether it's technologically, financially, operationally, or hiring the latest talent. So I think these are some of the points I feel are very important in my 20 years of experience. And I'll leave the stage to Abhigyan now to give us some gyan.
No, sir. Actually, what I wanted to say, Shubham said, one point, I'll say two. My, thoughts, my 2 cents in this matter will be completely non-technical. I'll speak from a human and emotional perspective, rather a maturity perspective, which I feel that every founder should have, right? Both you, Wani sir, and Yashashwy have highlighted, what should be their, technical thoughts, right, or their business thoughts to start an enterprise. My thoughts are, as I mentioned, today starting a startup has become a fad, right? And with the Gen Z, they are growing up in it. All of you are growing up in it. We have seen, Wani sir has seen the transition starting. We have seen it as it is happening. You are growing up in it. India is, coming up. G20 was just a, trailer. India has been coming up, and in the next 2 decades, India is poised to, rival China in the US when it comes to, the enterprises, the novelty, the technology, and the brain power, the raw talent. Reverse brain drain is happening. The raw talent that is going to grow in the country. Right. To that effect, anybody who's starting their enterprise, my thought is, focus on 2 things. Right. Of course, focus on business ideas, focus on the market, focus on finances. But most importantly, understand this is not a one-day journey. This is not a one-day sprint, not a 1-year sprint, not even a 2, maybe 3-year sprint. It is a marathon. Now, I can't stress on this enough. People have told this thing to me. Even I ignored this in my initial years, right? I launched my own startup back in 2019 due to, XYZ reasons. It did not work out, but I took some learnings out of it, which I'm sharing. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Do not get into startups or, founding your own enterprise if you're not in it for the long run. Keep 3 years, 5 years as your deadline. There will be changes, there will be ups and downs, you will see various struggles, you will have to do struggles, right? And if your thought is, if I don't see some success in 1 year, I don't have the budget, my family is in financial distress, my friends are doing well, I'm going to leave. Boss, do not get into this. There's nothing shameful about not getting into a startup. Do a job, be financially stable. But if you are getting in it, if you're in it to change the world, if you're in it to change people's lives, if you're in it to create a revolution or a disruption, be in it for the long run, stick through it. Do not change your mind. Do not jump from one idea to the other. I have worked closely with 2 founders who have kept on jumping from one idea to the other. They're brilliant people. Take my word for it. They're brilliant people, but they don't have consistency or dedication in what they do. Right? So be consistent. Take one idea. If you have to change your strategy of achieving success. But if you believe in that idea, stick by it. Take 5 years as your timeline and do it. Second thought in this matter is very human thought. Have 2 people, right? They can be your friends, they can be your colleagues, they can be your co-founders, they can be your parents, they can be your partners, they can be your kids, they can be anybody, right? Have 2 people who will be there to support you. because a lot of founders say that you either you're in or you're out. It's a one man thing. You have to fight it out. We are all humans at the end of the day. We need support, and this kind of support doesn't mean that कोई दोस्त आया बोल दिया अरे तू तो बढ़िया कर रहा है. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of friends who have supported, right? A lot of friends, a lot of family members, my own parents, very close friends, right? They have supported me throughout my entrepreneurial journey, right? Not many people are lucky enough to have that, but if you're starting, have at least one or two people like that, because you are going to face times when you're going to question yourself, when you're going to question your motive in being in the startup ecosystem. That is when these one or two people will be there to support you and to keep you straight. Sir, yeah,
And you also need friends who will be honest to your face to tell you,
Yes.
boss, you're getting too carried away, you're getting too arrogant, man. You need to come down to this thing called earth. Zameen pe aa jao aap log. Because humility is going to take you places, arrogance isn't. So आपके दोस्त अच्छे हैं, but ऐसे दोस्त भी अच्छे रखने चाहिए जो आगे से छुरी मारे, पीछे से नहीं. So you need a
Equal.
balance of both. You need your family, your friends, your foes. You need everything, and you need pets also. So yeah, please, because I advocate a
Yes.
lot to adopt a pet at the end of the day. But yeah, it was a
Our
great discussion,
co-founder,
man. Yeah,
our co-founder is a
yeah.
he's Puzzle Agarwal. He's our sleeping partner. He's 9 years old,
Okay.
Comedian. So
Oh,
yeah, we love
wonderful,
pets.
wonderful. I have 3
It's
cats,
really
so
important
they
for a startup to
basically.
have support, yes. And yeah, along with you having your friends, it is really important for a startup. You do not know everything, so please have advisors also in different categories of business, marketing, let it be finance. You need to have advisors. There are so many government initiatives out there. There's so many capitalists. Yeah, rightly said. We are in a fundraising winter. Khalid sir just said, but then still we do have a lot of initiatives still going on out there where you're able to raise funds. So raise funds, get advisors, acquire talent. Startup की दुनिया है, बन जाएगा, but stick there. It's a marathon. It's not a short race. It's not a sprint.
Absolutely.
It's a marathon.
Absolutely, Mr. Yash and Mr. Khalid and Abhigyan. It was like very, very insightful and very engaging discussion. I personally loved it, and I hope the audience who are watching and who are gonna watch in the future, it's gonna get really inspired by the fact that it's not that hard, but it's not that easy as well. And by the
It's
learnings
also
they can
thought
take.
provoking for them.
Yeah, it's absolutely. So thank you so much for being in this panel, and thank you so much for joining us, and thank you audience for staying there and just keep supporting us. And we will see you in yet another episode of Organized Originals very soon. So thank you so much, and yeah, let's
Thank you,
roll it
Sheen. Thank you for hosting
and
us here.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Organized
And
Chaos. Thank you, Khalid sir. Thank you,
Definitely.
Abhigyan,
All
for
right.
your insights.
Thank you, everybody. And I have a message to our audiences. Please feel free to approach any one of us if you have questions. We're more than happy to answer you.
For
Shubham
sure.
will put our social media handles. Anyways, if you go
For sure.
on to the Organized Chaos's Instagram, we are there. So don't
Yeah.
hesitate. शर्म मत करो. Please पूछ लो. पहली बार शर्म आएगी, अगली बार नहीं आएगी. And
नहीं,
most
शर्म
all
करोगे
the
तो
successful
स्टार्टअप कैसे
people.
बनाओगे? शर्म करोगे तो स्टार्टअप नहीं बनेगा.
बिल्कुल 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 and most successful people always know when to say कि मुझे नहीं आता, बता दो. आज नहीं
Absolutely.
आएगा, कल तो आएगा, right? So on that note,
Exactly.
thank you so much for Organized Chaos for organizing such a wonderful session today. And thanks to my panelist speakers. It was a fun evening, and I hope to catch up with you guys some fine day physically over a cup of masala chai or anything. And good evening to everybody.
Yeah. So I think I would like to end this panel discussion on the note of which is the tagline of Organized Chaos. It's let the chaos begin. So thank you so much, everyone. Stay tuned.